Today we're continuing with the Jeweled Leaves palette to create a beautiful floral design. We're going to go ahead and assemble some collaged flowers. So here's all the papers that I printed. I'm going to put the vases aside, and the two sheets that I need here are the petals on the quarter sheet and the circles here. What I'm going to do first is cut this sheet here into quarters. And I use the paper trimmer. If you don't have a paper trimmer, you could use a pair of large scissors. And then the next thing I'd like to do is cut each of these petals out along the outside of the black line. And I'm trying to keep this background intact as much as possible so that I can reassemble it if I'd like onto a sheet like this. I may also keep some of those shapes free so that I can include them in my collage, and I'll show you what I mean. So I find the easiest thing to do is to separate these, just easier to cut the petals. We'll have 3 different sized flowers for each of the collage papers. So we'll have a larger, a medium, and a small. The circles are going to go into the center of the flowers, and we only need 3, but we have 6 to choose from. So I'm going to go ahead and separate all of these now. So we have all of these clusters of petals separated. And then the other thing I'm going to need to assemble the flowers is this sheet here. And we have a total of 4 large, 4 medium, 4 small. So I want 4 large, 4 medium, and 4 small here. And I can put this aside. To cut the petals, you'll want to go on the outside of the black line. And I'm just going to maneuver around so that I keep that background all in one piece. I'm going to go ahead and do these 5 petals. Okay, so I've cut out the 5 petals and I've kept the background all in one piece. I'm going to show you the circles now. So we only need 3 of them, but I think what I'm going to do is cut out all 6, and then I'll have the background all in one piece. So for the circles, same thing, just going along the outside of the black line. And I'll go ahead and do all 6. Okay, so I did the same thing here. I cut out all of the shapes from the collage paper, and then I kept the background in place. And I want to show you the white circles here. So what we're using these for will be on the back of the flower, and I'll show you how to do that. But for these, we're cutting them out different. We're going on the inside of the black line. We just want these a little bit smaller than the circles we've cut here. So for this, we're gonna be using all 12 of these white circles. So the inside of the black line for these. I'm going to cut the rest of these off camera, and then I'll come back with all of the flower petals, the circles on collage paper, and then the white circles. All right, I'm back with all of my shapes cut out, and I've organized them by color here. So all the petals up here, I have all the circles on collage paper here, and then the white circles here. And then as you can see, I was able to keep all of these intact. And I'll be gluing these down, some of them down on a white piece of paper. Some of them I'm going to keep free like this so I can use them as collage fodder. And then I also was able to keep this intact, and this will be able to be used in some collage somewhere. So I want to go ahead and organize this a little bit more so that it'll be easy to assemble the collaged flowers. So here's all of my large circles, and I'm going to place them next to the large petals here. Same with the medium. And then the small. Now for these circles, we only need 3 of each color. And I'm going to just show you the flowers here. So for the centers, we're going to be using a different color than the petals. So what I want to do is just organize these how I want them. So I'm not going to use the yellow with the yellow. I'll put a yellow here for the large. I'll do a yellow medium there and a yellow small there. And then for this color, I'll do large there, medium. Let's do small and medium. I'm just eyeing it so that they're all going to be different. And then maybe large, medium. This takes a little bit of thought. I'm going to switch that up. Okay, so I have one of each color in each of these. So I might have overthought it there. So these ones we're not going to be using, so I'll set those aside. So I'll pick those up. Sometimes I find it easier just to take a scrap piece and then scoop the small pieces. I'll put those aside. And what I need here is my Mod Podge. I have it in a deli container, a Mod Podge brush, and then I have a wet and dry cloth here just to keep my hands clean and dry. And I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to grab this large white circle and then these 5 petals. And we're going to be using this center. I'm going to dip the tip in the Mod Podge and then place it on the white circle. Just going one by one. And I'm just eyeballing it to get the petals around the circle. They don't have to be completely symmetrical. It adds some interest if they're not always completely symmetrical. So maybe having one overlap just a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is take my brush, put some Mod Podge there, and then place the center. I'm going to go ahead and do that for the medium flower, for the yellow. Grab all the pieces, and then petal by petal dip them and press them on the white circle. And then the last one. So again, they don't have to be exact. Oh, and then the center. So take the brush, put a little Mod Podge in the center, and then stick it on. And we'll do one more together. So grabbing all my pieces, and then one by one dipping and placing them on the white circle. Just turning it as I go. And the last one. I just want to make sure I lift it off the Mod Podge that's on my silicone mat so it doesn't stick down there. Little Mod Podge in the center. And there we go. So we have the large, medium, and small of the yellow done. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is off camera, I'm going to go ahead and assemble the rest of the flowers. And then I'll be right back. All right, so I have all of my collage flowers completed. And the next step I want to do is to cut out the vases. So the collage paper that I decided on for this is the same sheet for both the small and the large. And what I want to do first is to separate these into 4 sections using my paper trimmer. And if you don't have a paper trimmer, you can use a pair of large scissors. So now I have a nice variety of vases, and what I'm going to do is cut them all out. I'll show you one. I'll do the one with the lighter background. And just like we did with the flower petals, we're going to cut on the outside of the black line. So just maneuvering the scissors and keeping the background all in one piece if we can. And just maneuvering up and around the vase. Moving along around the details, not worrying about if it's exact. We'll be adding some other components to the collage, and it's nice to have some variation since this is a handmade collage. Okay, so there we have the first vase, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest out, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so now all of the vases are cut out. We have the flowers cut out. Let's look at what else we have for scraps to be used as fodder. So we have all these circles. We have this white sheet, and then we have all of that scrap from cutting out the petals. So at this point, I want to make a decision. Do I want to keep these all loose so that I can kind of see if I want to use it in my collage, or do I want to glue it to, and I just grab something here, do I want to glue it to a white background so that we can do something like this and then use this as the fodder in our collage? And this one was done on the monthly journaling page. I think what I'm going to do is do one section on a journaling page. I do want to show you how I glue that down. I'm going to move some things aside. This is some leftover. I think I had made a copy of one of my journaling pages. And what I'm going to do is choose these blue ones. And you can do any variation. So maybe you want to do, yeah, we could do something like this. Maybe I'll do that. You know what? I'm going to stick with just the blue. I want to have them all the same, but you can see that there's many options. So what I'm going to do is get my Mod Podge out. So here it is, and then I have a small brush. And what I'm going to do is put a coat of Mod Podge down on this paper, and then I'm going to set this on. And I want enough Mod Podge so this slips around, so I can get all of these lined up as best as I can. And then do the next one. And these don't have to be lined up perfect, but I do tend to like to fit them back together the way they were. It's kind of fun. And just getting these last two down. So enough Mod Podge to slip it around, just in case it doesn't land where you want it. And then here's the last one. So pressing this down, closing up those circles. And then the last thing I like to do is add a layer of Mod Podge on the top. And that's going to give a nice protective coat. It's also going to bring out the brilliance of the colors in the printed page. So we'll set this aside, let it dry. I'm going to cap my Mod Podge container. Now I got to find a cap that I have that has a cutout X. So I have this. So I can slip my brush in there. That'll keep my brush from drying out. We'll put this aside, and then I'm going to clean up this workspace, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so now it's time to decide on the surface that I'm going to be collaging onto. And what I like to do is use the stretched canvas. You could also do it on cardboard, chipboard. You could do it on a sheet of paper. I'm going to go ahead and get my stretched canvas. So this is an 8x8. I have all of my fodder handy. And then what I want to do is decide on some colors for the background. So we have that whole selection. Let's look at our sampler page. So we have this whole collection of collage papers. So the vases, we used these here. The flowers we used here. So maybe I want to print out some variation of this. We may want some strips of these up here, though, to make it more cohesive. So what I'm going to do, we have these half sheets. I'm going to print out, let's see, I'm doing my math. So there's 16 different collage papers. We have half sheets, so there's 8 different half sheets. And I'm going to go ahead, print them all out, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so here are the half sheets. So there's a different collage paper on each half. And here are the 8 different selections. What I like to do is cut each of these in half now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with my paper trimmer. Okay, so I have all of the papers cut in half. And I'm going to put them here. I'm going to get my substrate, which is the stretched canvas. And I do want to move some things to the side so I can move this canvas up just a little bit. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is decide on a background. And for this one here, I'm going to make it pretty simple, but I'll give you some other ideas so that you can just explore what you want to do. So what I'm going to do is choose a lighter background, because again, these are a darker value, the vases. If you cut out other vases, then you'll want to just explore what you have based on what you decided on your flowers in the vases. But for me, I'm gonna, let's see, I could do a dark value for the bottom if I choose some of the other patterns. So obviously I'm not going to do this vase with this. So I'm going to just play around. I'm going to decide if I want to do some of the neutral colors, so the whites, blacks, and grays. Do something like that. Just kind of fun. These are the same size vases, smaller and larger. Starting to like that. And sometimes what I like to do, I'm kind of thinking out the rule of thirds. You can't see the edge of my canvas, but it's about here. I'm starting to think of something like this. And I might do a strip of another color. So laying down some different flowers here, using the large and small. I want to do a big one. So just play around. One thing I do want to say is keep in mind, if you're going to add a paper border along the edge, you do want to consider that when you're laying down the components of your collage. I think what I'm going to do now is, I do like this variation, this teal, light teal on the top and this gray on the bottom. So before I get too far in my design making, I'm going to move these aside. I'm going to kind of keep them where I had them because I like that, and I'm going to glue this down. So making some space, I'm going to move these sheets to the side. I'm going to move this over, and I want to glue this. Doesn't really matter. Do it like that. I'm going to glue the bottom one down first. Didn't really matter which I chose, but I switched it halfway. So I'm taking my Mod Podge. I'm going to use a larger brush just to make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to coat this. And what I want to do is coat it thick enough so that the paper is going to start curling. So really coat that Mod Podge in there. And I'll show you in a moment what we're looking for. We really want that Mod Podge to soak into the surface, into the fibers of the paper, so you want it to really curl up. I found that makes it so it's less likely to bubble and wrinkle if it's nice and saturated. So I'm going down here. Just putting it down. So thinking about the rule of thirds, and what that means is kind of visually breaking up the picture in thirds. You don't have to follow any rules, but visually breaking it up into thirds might add a little bit more interest. So I'm going to go ahead, do that, and I'm going to do the same thing with this here. I'm going to coat it. You can add, we're doing this a simple design, kind of following this rule of thirds so we can see how that works out, but you can do this any way you like with all of the collage papers you have. You don't have to do these half sheets even. You could use some of the smaller, or you could add a full sheet. So I think I coated that nice. I'm going to just do a little bit more. I felt like the side I didn't get. Okay. So moving this over. I'm going to actually lift that. I have a little bit of the other collage paper there. Probably didn't matter because I could have covered that up, but I decided to flip it. And I'm trying to get this as straight as possible visually. And then I'm going to press this down. Now I may want to use something like a credit card or other type of card to press that down to minimize any wrinkles or bubbles. Okay. I'm going to move this aside. I'm going to clean my workspace so that things won't start sticking down. So I'll do that. Okay, so the next step here is I want to trim the edges. So this is still drying on there. I'm going to go ahead and trim it. I'm flipping it over, and I have a pair of scissors. I'm thinking for a moment because I'm trying to decide if I am in fact doing borders. If I'm not doing borders, I want to take a little bit more care in cutting so that it's nice and flush. So if I use the scissors, sometimes it gets a little bit more ratty. So I think what I'll do is decide to do borders. So we're going to go ahead and use the scissors. I'm just thinking out loud. I might get it straight enough so it doesn't even matter. So why don't I see how it turns out, and then I'll decide if I want to do some borders along this later. So this side's getting a little ratty. I'm not getting it as nice as the others. So that might end up making my decision for me later. Okay. So even visually, I didn't really get this straight, but that's okay, because actually maybe it's a little bit nicer if it's not straight. So what I want to do now, I'm looking at this. That's kind of how I decided. Sometimes I like to add a little strip of another color down the middle. And I don't want to forget that I have all these nice pieces of fodder here. So do I want to add some other components into the collage? So what I'm going to do is look at my half sheets again. I'm going to move these aside, and now it's just about playing around. Yeah, maybe even this. I'm going to cut a strip of this with my paper cutter. Or paper trimmer. Paper cutter is a little bit different than this. I'm going to just cut a strip. Might have even wanted to go smaller. I'm going to put that aside. It's going to be hard to cut that smaller. But if I do it from the bigger piece, just doing a smaller strip. So now it's just about exploring and having fun. You can do exactly what I'm doing. I'm just giving you ideas. So this is what I was thinking, is just kind of separating that a little bit more. And I could glue it, not like it, cover it with something else. When I'm doing little pieces, I'm going to just reach. When I'm doing little pieces, sometimes it's easier for me to use a little chipboard to put the glue on, so I don't have to keep on cleaning up my silicone mat as I go. So I'll just do that. So just going for a nice basic design here. Deciding whether to add that, or let's look at these. I'm going to cut into this. Cutting the edges off first. So sometimes it's nice to put these in here with having the background show right through. That's a nice visual. Or doing it like this and having more contrast with that white popping through. So see the difference? You do something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and play with the background a little bit, and then we'll put the components, the vases and the flowers on there as well. Okay, so this is what I've decided so far for the background. And one of the things that I want to do that I haven't gone over yet is making some stems for the flowers. Now those can be drawn in, or I could actually make them. And typically what I do is just cut little strips from these papers. You can also, if you have some scraps from your samplers, if you did the samplers, you can cut strips there. So I'm going to show you one. Let's see. I'm going to, so all I'm going to do is cut a strip. And I can do this with my scissors or with my paper trimmer. Sometimes it's easier to add the stems of the flowers sometimes it's easier to add the stems of the flowers before you glue the flowers down. So what I mean is taking the flower, flipping it over, and then adding a little Mod Podge to the back. And you make sure that white side up for both, and then just do like that. So sometimes I like to just go ahead and get all of my stems put on there. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that using some scraps that I have. So here I have my flowers with the stems, and you can decide which is the easiest way for you. So just try it out, whether you want to do the stems first or put them in later. I'm going to go ahead and glue the vases down and arrange the flowers how I want them. Okay, so I have the flowers kind of where I want them, and because I put the stems on already, I think what I find the easiest thing to do, I'm going to think about this. I think if I bend these up, hold them where I want them, then add a layer of Mod Podge to all of this. And then one by one, place them down. Now I'm going to slip this one. I'm slipping them down a little bit because I forgot that I did want to do a little bit of a border perhaps. Now I want to add a little bit of glue. Well, I can coat this one completely and lay down this one. So you'll just decide what's the easiest process for you. Just try different things out. I'm going to do that. And then what I want to do before anything glues down is get my small pair of scissors, and I'm going to cut these before there's a chance of them gluing down onto the vase. So that's one way to do it. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to this cluster of flowers. Okay, so now all of the flowers are glued down, and I'm scanning this so my vase is kind of shifted over to this side a little bit more than I had intended. So I do have some open space here that maybe I want to fill in. I mean, I could throw down flowers. So there's many options. So I'm going to just once again play around and see what I want to do, if I want to add anything, because to me there's too much open space right here. Okay, so I added that little cluster of shapes there, and I'm liking that. And then I also added, sometimes I really like to make sure I get some real dark values, and the black is the darkest, so I put some of the black there and a strip there. So at this point, I have this flower just floating here I'd thrown down, and I think I do want to put that there. I don't know if it makes sense or not, but it doesn't have to. I kind of like it there. So when I started this video, I had said we're going to keep it real simple. And when I said that, I do feel like these can be really, really simple. Like you can do this sheet, the vases and the flowers, and have a really nice arrangement. And that's where I was intending to go. But, you know, once you get started with collaging, it's hard to stop. And with all of the fodder pieces that we had, I wanted to just keep on going. So at this point, I'm considering this done in terms of the collaging. I'm going to add a layer of Mod Podge across the whole surface because I want to make sure that it's completely coated for a couple reasons, because we're going to probably add some acrylic paints to it, and it's just easier to add the paint when there's a coat of Mod Podge on there. The other thing is the Mod Podge really brings out the colors of the paper. You can see, I'm not sure if you can see, but look at this color was made to be teal. And when it comes out of the printer, it's not as teal for me. But when I add the Mod Podge, it really brings it out. I mean, your color, every printer may print a little bit differently, but you'll see when you're adding Mod Podge, it really does bring out the brilliance of the of the paper, of the inks on the paper. I could use a large brush, but I grabbed the small one, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to coat this entire surface. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry, and I'm going to clean up my workspace, and then I'll be back and we'll decide if we want to add anything else to this collage. All right, I'm back with a tidy workspace. The collage is completely dry, and just to give you some tidying tips, if I'm not sure if I'm done with collaging at this point during this session, I'm gonna wrap my large brush in a plastic wrap so I can use it later and it doesn't dry out. I've covered my small brush with the Mod Podge. I've placed my little scraps and fodder into this container here. This is a tray that's used for a drawer organizer, and I've put my larger sheets in here because those won't fit into this. So typically I'll put all of my papers within one palette and something like this. So here's from the mandala from earlier in the week. These are scraps from the samplers from making the mini collages. So I'll put all this here. So if I'm still working on a palette, I want something like this to organize. If I'm done with a palette and I don't think I'm going to be using it for a while, I could keep these in here. For this, I typically will throw into a plastic bag so I can see them. Sometimes I'll throw all of these into a plastic bag, a smaller plastic bag, and then put everything in here. So that way when I'm coming back to this palette, I can use this. But for our purposes now, we're still going to be using the Jeweled Leaves palette for the rest of the week. We'll be creating the animal collages. So I'm going to keep everything like this. And then now I'm taking a peek at this collage again and deciding if I want to do anything more. And I am going to take out my acrylic markers. So the setup that I like for that, I keep all in this tray. So I have a jar with some water on it, some cotton swabs, just in case I mess up with the acrylic markers. I can wash those off easily. I have some baby wipes here, and then I have a scrap piece of paper. This is from the sampler, and I've coated it with Mod Podge, and then I can test out my markers. So at this point, I'm going to take a look at this. Oh, and I have my acrylic markers for the palette for the Jeweled Leaves. So we have the yellows. Just organize them quickly. The yellows, the greens, the teals, the blues, and the black and white. So that's all within this color palette. So I'm just scanning this. One of the things that I do like to do sometimes is outline the black again. It's something you may or may not want to do. So sometimes I go along the flowers. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. Maybe I'll do it later. But I'm going to test out my black marker. I'm finding that this one has been drying out a little bit. And sometimes what I have to do, first I always try to kind of push it up and down, see if that works. Sometimes pulling out a baby wipe. I had to do this the last time I used this marker. And then I kind of just roll it around in there, push it again. Typically that'll get it going. So that's better. So maybe I'm going to add some detail in spots, like outline these a little bit. And I'm going to just go ahead and just add some marks in different areas with the different colored acrylic markers. Okay, so at this point, I feel like I'm done. I may come back and add some more doodles, but as you can see, I added some just all different doodles. So I did some kind of triangle shapes like that, some dots. I added some doodles within the flower centers, and then on the petals, I put little flowers in these little openings here. And at this point, I really like how it's turned out. So I'm going to stop here, and you can see that there's a ton of creative possibilities to work with this kit and this palette. So have fun. Oh, and I see one thing that I want to do. I'm going to come in here. I did these black little circles down along here, and then every other one I did a white, and I meant to come back and put a color in there. So that's what I mean. I might come back and add more. In terms of a border, in the mandala video, the Jeweled Leaves mandala, I showed you how to go ahead and add a collage border and edges to the collage, so you can go and check that out if you want to do that. But basically you'll be cutting strips. I'm gonna see if I have something handy to show you. This is not the color I would choose, but for example, well, could choose that. So many ways to do it, but basically it's about gluing a strip, starting at the top and wrapping it around and going to the back to create a border. The other option, if you don't want to go start here, sometimes I just cover the edges. And again, I'll recommend that you go back to the mandala video, and I'll probably take that clip out of there so that you can watch it on its own without going through the mandala one, but it's right at the end. But you could also glue a strip just along the edge and then bring it to the back so that you end up not going into the design here, but you're covering up the canvas, the stretched canvas. So those are some other ideas. At this point, I like it like this. I may go back and add some strips of collage paper to the edges here, but that will be later. I'm going to sit on this. I am really enjoying how this looks as it is. I hope you've gotten a whole bunch of ideas and created a beautiful work of art. I'm sure you have. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.